Hey, welcome back to Two Super Guys Trade Stocks. I'm Dylan.
And I'm Vinny. And man, oh man, for those of us that are Meta shareholders, it's my largest position. It was an interesting week. I get to get a little insight into the Meta shareholder mind with the conference call and the first quarter earnings. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to get my kind of breakdown as far as valuation here at the end of the video. Yeah, yeah. So this is really what like it comes down to is just like lots of winning. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
I just no one knows. I don't know if you saw Kramer just came out with a we will not go into a recession thing. So I'm hoping that means we're going to go into a recession. I can get a little bit more meta. That
Yeah.
should help a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, one of the larger regrets of the last couple of years for me is like not taking out a second mortgage on my home to buy more
Yeah.
meta stock when it was like $100 a share. But what are you gonna do? That's life, right? So solid week up 7.5%. Okay, just like a absolute monster move. Part of this is them. Part of this was the market overall. We get the good jobs report. Dylan's going to talk about that a little bit tomorrow. The boosted the market on Friday, but this other earlier spike was really their earnings report that did that for them. So it's a nice solid number there. Somehow I have no idea on earth how this
Yeah.
happens.
I mean,
They're still growing their user base.
they're going to run out of people at a
Yeah,
certain point. Like I don't even it's I mean, I feel like we say this every quarter. It's like, all right, that's it.
yeah, yeah.
Somehow.
I
They're
mean,
just
at
bots.
this point, they need to start like actually funneling money into SpaceX for the colonization of Mars. Otherwise, they're not gonna be able to grow their user base. But somehow they did it. 3.43 billion users. All right,
Yeah.
daily active people. One thing I did want to highlight here, and this is actually unusual in the way that they organize their slide deck, is that they have this revenue by geography earlier in the slide deck than they used to. It used to be the user number that they led with. That was later on this time. But the thing worth pointing out here is Asia Pacific. That's really where a lot of this tariff and trade kind of war will be played out. So how much of that of their business is related to that? It's part of it, but it's not like the lion's share of it. So it's a good idea to kind of have that in context here. Okay. So as far as the category, the way they break down the regions, other than the rest of the world, it's like the lowest category in terms of the revenue source. Right. Somehow, some way, I have no idea. They just keep on crushing the numbers here. Look at this revenue number in billions. Do you remember the talking point a couple years ago after the whole Apple tracking transparency thing came out? It's like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't know if that is ever going to have a quarter above $30 billion of revenue again. Yeah, now their baseline for a non fourth quarter, a non-major retail holiday quarter, is 40 billion plus.
Yeah. I do remember that. That was like a huge thing. Actually, I feel like they lost like 8% after that announcement. And at no point did it even remotely make any difference at
Yeah.
all. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And then as far as like the margin here, recovered nicely too. Remember, they was another talking
oh,
point
yeah.
was like, oh, the margin has dropped off significantly. It's not the same business anymore. We're back up into the 40% range. Big sexy numbers. The Reality Labs has been consistently losing about $4 billion a quarter.
I'm okay
But
with that.
when you're making $40 billion in revenue and you have a 40% operating margin on your core business, you can afford to do that.
This is actually the most attractive thing. This is why I prefer Meta over Apple in terms of investing now, not 10 years ago, but now, is because
Uh-huh.
you still have a visionary as the CEO, right? You
Okay.
don't have a person who's optimizing margins and optimizing profit. You have a
Yeah.
person who's making a heck of a lot of money, but also still willing to take big risks.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. Amongst like the major tech companies, Meta is still unique in that
Yeah,
way, where they have like the founder is still running the business and is willing to take those big swings at long shots and moonshot projects.
and
Um,
he's 100% 80, at least 80% cyborg. I don't know if you've seen him on the recent talk shows. It's terrifying. He's
yeah,
he's
definitely. Yeah. He is the AI. It's funny because like you mentioned that cost control with like Tim Cook, Apple has still been able to pull that. I mean, I'm sorry, Meta still has been able to pull it off in like Apple fashion, where you look at this is expenses as percent of revenue. They have controlled their expenses, meaning they have that extra margin to not only be investing in Reality Labs, but also be aggressively investing in AI capex as they foray into hopefully becoming like an absolute behemoth, which is one of their models of AI. Yeah.
There, yeah,
Um,
there is going to be a little bit of issues with that. Uh, Zuckerberg's been questioned to the Supreme Court about some stuff, so we'll have to see how that shakes out. But that's not unique to Meta. That's across all AI. So if anything changes with this, it's not Meta specific. It is all of them. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're definitely at the size where governments are their enemy, like,
yeah,
and each other to a degree, but there are no other like serious competitors that are even in the realm. So extremely profitable business, net income still growing. Very, very nice numbers there as far as that goes. CapEx, they are aggressively investing in their infrastructure, particularly related to AI and the rollout of AI. They're going to talk a little bit about in the conference call notes on particularly how they see that being utilized here. As far as their ad impressions, right? Their core legacy advertising business here, up 5% in the most recent quarter. So, a small number, but they did talk about more user engagement once again, and that was in the conference call as far as the amount of time people are spending on their platforms. But this is the one that I care more about is average price paid per ad, 10% increase year over year. So that is showing that they are actually having a positive net value for their advertisers in order for them to continue to pay not only to advertise but a higher price year over year for those ads. It's a
yeah,
good sign.
yep, solid.
All right, free cash flow. All right, so this is going to come into a calculation of like their trailing 12 month free cash flow, which is something I use to kind of relatively gauge how expensive a stock is compared to some of their peers. But as you see here, quarter on a quarter of basis, they're just still spinning off $10+ billion. That's despite as you saw in the previous slides, them like doubling their capex compared to last year, and they're still spinning off massive amounts of free cash flow, which is awesome. All right, so let's come conference call notes. All right. So this is like I was saying, as far as the ad impressions, they did talk about how they've used AI to tailor people's news feeds, and because of that, they had 6 to 7% increase in watch time between Facebook and Instagram. That one was 6%, one was 7%. And comparatively, they had, I think it was said 8 or 9% in watch time over the first 9 months that they were using AI to tailor the algorithms. So that they've shown a little sequential increase in the pace of that, where the AI is getting more effective at tailoring people's news feeds and increasing the watch time of these services, right? Which is
Yep.
scary, but also good from an investor standpoint, right?
Let's
Yeah,
not get started on if AI is scary because I don't know what happens in 10 years. Like all of our kids, I don't even understand what jobs are going to go for. So I'm not even going to think
very,
about that. That's
very true. Well, the idea here is that if we invest well enough, they won't need jobs. They'll be independently wealthy.
yeah, a lot of sci-fi movies on that. All right.
Yeah. All right. And this is another kind of data point that they've talked about in the conference call, how the conversion rates are up 5% for their AI related ads. That, their AI is working well enough that it's targeting these ads where they're actually getting a better return on spend, which is another way you can manufacture. So the first kind of data point is that 5% increase in ads, being shown over year. This is that 10% increase in price for ads because they have a 5% higher conversion rate when they're using their
Right.
AI kind of targeting algorithm here. So they also launched this week their standalone AI app. This was something that I haven't heard anyone else talk about. It's worth listening to a little bit. A couple snippets came up about basically that AI algorithm will include your past queries. Okay. So they're going to look at not just what you asked it, but also what sort of results you've looked at in the past and how you use those for further queries in order to better tailor the AI kind of, modeling, not just to give you the best answer, but to give you the best answer for you.
So, but what's I guess so I just saw the announcement, but what's the point of it? Is it
So I think this is what they're trying to do is a little bit of a Google thing here, where they're going to have a standalone app for that top 1 million people in terms of that use AI, and they're going to have multiple different tiers of access to the AI model, where this is going to have more capabilities for people that are really reliant upon it for like their day-to-day workflow.
so
Like for
it
instance, I know Google mentioned theirs that it was going to be something that the coders would be able to use to write code. I'm
right.
not sure if Meta has formally stated that, or if that's in like the capability for this app. I haven't downloaded it, but the fact that they're going to use your prior kind of searches to tailor future results, even on these like AI kind of search algorithms, I think is pretty fascinating. Do
Yeah.
you not?
No, it's
Yeah.
awesome. It's definitely cool. I just didn't know. I haven't looked into it yet either, which we probably should have before this video. I didn't know if this is they're trying to compete with ChatGPT. If this was like their version of ChatGPT, but it remembers everything.
Kind of, but I don't think they actually, expect to derive anything significant in terms of return on investment from it.
Yeah,
It's going to be more training the model, is my understanding.
nice.
Um, And then they did say that there was more uncertainty regarding tariffs, and that they would have to they significantly widened out what their expectation is for capex this year. They decreased it slightly, but they also broadened the range because they don't really know what impact will be, and that they're trying to work on supply chains in order to have tariffs be less of an impactful event. Depending on what exactly position they're in.
Right.
So, all right, this is where we get to kind of calculate some numbers here as far as like valuation wise. So, free cash flow yield as of close on Friday, Meta had a market cap of 1.5 trillion. They had $70 billion in cash, $20 billion in debt, so 42 billion on net cash. And despite having that double their capex, 49.8 billion in trailing 12 month free cash flow, meaning a 3.4% trailing 12 month free cash flow yield, like I said, in this very capex investment heavy cycle, which is still a pretty solid number.
It's yeah,
If you
that's
saw,
pretty good.
Google is 4, but that's despite the fact that both of these companies are now aggressively engaged in building their AI infrastructure. So, I mean, how much of a margin do you want to give that compared to companies that are not an investment cycle? So,
I because there's a visionary at the head, I give significantly more leeway because I mean he built everything. Um, One question I have for the community, guy, if you guys have an answer, I've only used ChatGPT. It is a game changer. Don't get me wrong. I wonder with this new app, what is the best and what people's preferences? If it's Claude, ChatGPT, or if it's Meta, I don't know. I can't remember if it's Llama or something like that. But what your user experience is and which one you prefer. Because if people start going away from ChatGPT to Google or Meta's AI, I mean that's kind of incredible. So
yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I understand that Meta's put themselves in a position where, their large language model is open source, so that they're trying to encourage more development upon their
mm,
platform. So it would make sense that it would be one of the more ascribed to, whereas, like, my understanding is ChatGPT is still a closed model.
it is.
But I don't know that for a fact to see what the adoption rate looks like. Certainly, there are people out there that track the app stores to see how often certain things are being downloaded. If they have any initial data on that or a good source for that sort of stuff, that'd be something I'd be willing to take a look at and interested in.
All right, guys, let us know what you think.
Catch you next one.